Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another series of coding and trends. Education is a field where diversity is the need. With diversity, there is lot of learning, there is lot of experience and exposure, which John Dewey has been speaking about in his philosophy of education. Every experience would be a learning, yet a process to build a new experience for every child. Our schools have been working on this since ages. We today have a special educator who happens to be the principal of Poddar International School CBSE, Mrs. Priya Rajwade, ma'am, somebody who believes equally into this philosophy and strives to work towards it. Technically, she is a postgraduate in microbiology subject, a person with science, logical reasoning, yet an artist within, a compare within, a sports person, name it, and she has done all. She comes from a highly educated background as well as a musical background also. She has been brought up in an environment where learning is a continuous process. Ma'am has equally been influenced by a lot of managerial skills, and that is why she has done her postgraduate in transformational leadership, which I believe she understands needs to be passed on to generations as well as to your second line and third line of executives so as to take the culture forward. Because for her, culture is the beginning and the end of the entire process. Welcome, ma'am. It's an honor to have you with us on this series.
Thank you, Girish, and a very happy morning to you.
Thank you.
Uh, and glad to be here because I think with the digital revolution that has set in, these opportunities to connect with each other have increased multifold, and that's the beauty of it. So it's just about exchange of ideas, but you know that you have to entertain all ideas equally. One of them may be the king. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much, ma'am. To begin with, as we have titled our series as Coding and Trends, because on behalf of Open Forum for Principles, we have been trying to understand how technology has been, looked at. Of course, we all know that technology has to be there in our lives now. It cannot be, moved out. Yet there are new things coming in, and coding is one of them. What do you think? According to you, coding is, and according to a layman, what he or she understands from coding?
So Girish, when you approached me with this topic, the very first thing that I did is I thought this is a very good question to begin with. You know, what is a layman's idea of coding? So I did ask a few people, what do you think? And I think I also find myself in the same category, that what is coding? And I think, oh, coding is something, really tricky, and it's only for those technology geeks who understand how a program is written, and it's not for a common man. It is a subject to be studied, and one has to attain mastery at it. So it's a subject like any other subject. Okay, that's one belief that people have. Second belief that, as I said, they have is that it's too technical. It's not for everyone. Third is that you have to have extremely excellent knowledge of technology to know anything about coding. So basically, for a layman, one would feel that, okay, this is out of my league. This is not something that I can practice in my day to day life, which in fact is not the fact or not the truth. Right. So I think we are using coding in our day to day life. The only thing we don't know is that this is called coding.
So how do we know that from a day-to-day life?
Okay. So any simple task, any task that you need to do, maybe you have to go to the market, so to do your grocery shopping or vegetable shopping, you make a blueprint, right? That okay, this is, you have got two, three, four tasks lined up, and you need to tell yourself that okay, I need to go from here to here, then I drop this there, then I pick this up, and then I go from this place to this place. So you have a lot of visual imagery going on while you are thinking about all these things. Correct. And whoever is taking you there, either you are yourself taking yourself there to that location, or you have a driver who is taking you to that location. You are going to give directions so that all the tasks are executed properly in time. Now, on the way, you may have got a blueprint in your mind, but on the way, you don't know what challenges you are going to face. So a road is blocked, some work going on. So obviously, you have to, in your mind map, again, you have to think of a detour and take another route, but you have to get to that destination. Okay. So this is visual coding. This is a way in which we connect our logical thinking, sequencing, rationalization of your ideas. And there is a problem that you have got to solve. Though we won't say grocery shopping is a problem, but it is a problem that needs to be solved. And then you have taken it stepwise, broken into smaller steps, and visited those steps mentally. And you're talking to yourself while you're making that program. This is coding, right? So you have coded the whole process in your mind, and then you have the app to execute is you.
Yes, yes. You are
You're
the
doing it every day. Yeah, you are the mobile. You are the program. You are the executor of that program. You are the app as well. So it's that simple.
right, right, right. And as you said, there could be also that we are fulfilling certain kind of need apart from the problem. And if that is
Absolutely.
done successfully, we need to be well planned and needs to have a proper sequence so that the flow is right. And also try to identify eventualities. Very simply put, ma'am, thank you so much. That's exactly how I think we should look at coding also. And as you said,
Right.
it's not just programming. It is, yes, it is the outcome of or output or the approach to get that output or outcome. But before that, there are so many other things that one needs to know. And in education, it has been there for years. Do you think
Yes.
academics is a part of coding in any way?
You mean to say whether we apply coding to academics?
Uh,
Do we
uh,
apply coding to academics?
what I wanted to know whether each subject that we study, be it science,
Mm-hmm.
English, be it mathematics,
Right.
science,
Right.
do they influence coding?
Yeah, definitely yes. And I would say more so in STEM subjects, coding is used more efficiently and effectively, I would say. I wouldn't say that it can't be used in languages, because when you are talking about the grammar and syntax of language, even there we have to use coding. In fact, uh, language has come out of these coding symbols. The written script is a type of code, and you are able to decipher it because you learned that code bit by bit. Okay, so there, even there we can use coding, but you can more use it more effectively and efficiently wherever you require logical thinking, reasoning, critical evaluation, analysis of a problem, and you require a solution, and more so if you require a novel solution to a problem. So I believe that even in languages, when a child is writing a script, okay, any kind of idea that you put across, many times we give children these stories. We say, okay, Alice in Wonderland, and this is the end of the story. Why don't you change it and tell us what it's going to be like? Or if I tell them that you're born and raised in Mumbai, and now we were in this pandemic situation, and you had access to the digital world, technology at your service, and I mean, no harm done. You are still going on with your classes and everything. What if you are born in a really, really small, remote village of this country where you did not have access to anything for this entire year? What would you be like at that time? What would your life be like? And how would you behave as a student? So there is a lot of coding going on in the child's mind to process that thinking, use the coded symbols of language, and put it in place in the form of an essay or a report kind of thing. So that's where you use it. So definitely academics and coding go hand in hand. We've been practicing it since a long time, but we've never thought that this is what we practice.
So it's like we have termed it now as coding, but it was there some.
Yes, yes, it's very much there since ancient times.
Yes. You really, I mean, spoke about the students of urban and the difference between the rural and the urban students, and that
Yes,
one needs to realize that specifically we from the urban clan need to know that it's a very sensitive thing, and I think that's what education is all about, to understand and realize the all possibilities, eventualities, and circumstances, and then evolve as a very good person. What according to
right.
you is very very significant for a child to develop to be a social contributor? I read a passage of yours where you have said that every individual is a capital. So how do
Yes.
you help us understand it further?
So, see, I feel in the times to come, there are two terms that I'm going to talk about here, a little bit moving from the context, but it's going to be really relevant. See, when you come to the corporate world, we are using this term very often today. We say we live in a VUCA world, okay? A world which is full of volatility, uncertainty, and a kind of, ambiguousness kind of thing. And this is the world that we live in, complexity also. So that's what VUCA is all about. And we say to overcome the challenges of the VUCA world, which is ever evolving VUCA world, you need four things actually to wipe clean the effect of VUCA world. You require SOAP. So SOAP also is an acronym. So S is about building social capital. Okay, that's the point that you have raised over here, and that's what we'll come to. O is about optimism. A is about acceptance. Acceptance is about accepting your life and being grateful for it. Okay, and P is about perseverance. Right. So these are the values that we are looking for in a child. We would want the child to develop his own social capital. So the values that should be inherently present in the child, again, we call them 21st century skills. When we develop the skills, we should also talk about 21st century values. Okay. And the highest, the biggest value in 21st century that we will need in over a period of time, again with the changing times, is that of perseverance, that of understanding diversity, that of being grateful for what you have, and empathy and compassion. These values will be really, really very important in time to come. And I remember the book about the five minds of the future by Dr. Howard Gardner, one of my favorite reads of all time, and one of the minds that's going to be really important in time to come, he says, is the ethical mind.
Yes.
Okay. So you may have a disciplined mind, you have an analytical mind, and a mind that embraces innovation and everything, but you have to have an ethical mind. So being ethical is a value that encompasses all these values that we spoke about just now.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's going to be a really important value in time to come. And I believe that the way we are making changes in the education system and with the new education policies, there's a lot of emphasis on these values.
Yes, yes. You
Yeah,
spoke about policies, and we have
yeah,
already heard about National Education Policy 2020.
right, right,
It speaks about social inclusion, where you need to be a part of and you need to make others part of the society. It talks about
right.
entrepreneurship, and
Mm-hmm.
that is what I want to know from you. How do you look
Mm-hmm.
at cultivating our coming generation to be entrepreneurs, and why?
Okay. So that's a very important question since you said and why. So I'll start it like this. See, most of the time when we are given to do something new, or we say there is a document, there's a policy which needs to be implemented and executed. We start with, there are three questions. Okay, what, how, and why. So we always begin with what. What is it that we need to do? And then we get panicky. How do we do it? Okay, that's the next panic button, that how do we do it? Oh my God, this is new. But the why of it, we seldom ask. That
Yes.
why do we do it? Okay, why is it required? So, coming back to national education policy and the long gap that has been there in framing the new policy, I feel that gap also has served us well because, see, a policy is contextual. It has to be in context with where you are today and where you want to be in the next 25 years to come. So the previous education policy was contextual at that time in terms of developing literacy and numeracy skills, because that is something that was the
Yeah.
important thing in those days. But today's policy is all about entrepreneurship, it is about innovation, it is about children being the co-creators of knowledge along with the teacher. It is no longer the sage on stage kind of policy that's going to fit in the new times to come, because these children are digital natives and they are being taught by digital immigrants. So knowledge can only be co-created. The teacher cannot dictate anything in the class. The teacher cannot say, I know it all. So it's very important for a teacher to show her vulnerability, also saying that, okay, I don't know, let's explore this together. And
Absolutely.
that's where innovation will come. So when I talk about a science class or solving a mathematical problem, instead of giving the age-old problems that we have, where we say that person A could fill the bucket in so much time, and person B was able to fill the bucket in so much time. So what is the difference in the amount of work done by the two people? Instead of that, why don't we give real life examples from places, case studies for children to understand that, okay, this is an actual problem in the world and this is what we need to solve. And another important context of national education policy this time is it is one document which has been vetted by many people. Okay, so it's come the process of formation of policy involved opinions from all stakeholders, literally. And that is why the contributors to the document are many. It's not just that a few people came up with this idea. That's really important. Second important factor that I see here in national education policy is that the industry, that's the place where the workforce of today is going to go in 10 years, 20 years, their own period of time. So a lot of these practices or the changes in the policy are derived from the industry. So what does the industry want? The industry doesn't want workers. They want innovators and thinkers. So think about a company like Amazon. Think about Instagram. Today, when we talk about it, we know that you go to Amazon, you just search for something, you will immediately get a lot of suggestions that why, this is a parallel product similar to this, or you will get product comparisons, and they give you value for your time. Okay, so all this has come through coding only, that how the site is going to direct you. So there's a lot of innovation going on over there. You can't say that I made the Amazon platform and I'm done and it's going to be there for 20 years to come. You have to innovate every day, because that's what the world wants now. The attention span and the ability for any product to capture the audience is only so much limited. Unless you keep innovating, you are really stagnant and you don't have that market value. So ultimately, it is about cultivating your social value and market value when you get into the job industry. So making children innovators in the classroom will happen only when you allow them to co-create knowledge and not just dictate knowledge through the chalkboard method to them.
Absolutely.
So that's a very important point. So why do we have to do it? Very important. We want to make children entrepreneurs and innovators, because that's where the world is going. It's all about being collaborators, coming up with new ideas, and being an entrepreneur doesn't mean that I am solo. I
Yes.
don't need anyone. You need so many people,
Right.
though you bring the idea to the market.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So you spoke about giving this free hand for real life experience or case studies to students to solve them and understand the concepts. They are
Mm-hmm.
time consuming. You need to really
Yes.
give that kind of time. At the same time, here we have parents who come from a generation where most of them believe only in scoring. How do you interpret this to your parents?
Uh, Girish, I would really like to say that though, this particular factor about parents being very, what do you say, fussy about the marks that the child scores, or they are only worried about the score that the child has got. I think if you look at the world today, and especially in the last 1 year, I think it's becoming more of a myth.
Oh,
With
lovely.
the newer generation of parents that are coming in, uh, as a principal of a very large school, and a school which has parents coming from all walks of life and coming from high positions in the industry,
Red band.
I see that mind shift. Yeah, there's a bandwidth, and I see a mind shift where the parent says that, ma'am, other than academics, can we have classes on developing values? Can we give them uh, projects to be done on their own so they can come up with newer ideas? I have so many students. I have at least 5 students who have published their books this year, and they are on Amazon now. The books are on Amazon. The children who are creating robots for helping the household during these pandemic times because there was no help available at home. And parents are encouraging that. They are not so much worried about marks. I think slowly that shift is taking place, and it is a very important shift. It has to take simultaneously in the mind, it takes place simultaneously in the minds of educators and the parent. It's never there in the mind of a child. Okay, when a child comes to school, he is never bothered about what marks he's scoring. He's there to enjoy the process.
Yes.
We are the ones who are taking the child away from the process into the product. Okay, we are saying we're not interested. We say, okay, this is the raw material, this is the product. What's the process? We don't have anything to do with it. And it's even if there is a process, the child says that, okay, it's cast in stone. This is how I have to do. So if I have to give an assignment, I'll say, write this and submit it tomorrow. So what if I want to draw it? What if I want to make a PowerPoint presentation? What if I want to make a model out of it? What if I want to research and discuss it with my friends? So I'm not allowing that. I'm just saying that, okay, this is what you have got to do. So there has to be a simultaneous shift, a larger shift in the minds of educators and the parents to understand that tomorrow's work industry is not about people with very, very high level uh, scores on their report card. It is about people who will be able to contribute positively, work with perseverance, work with cultural diversity, are able to contribute new ideas and not just yes men to their bosses, and each of them being an industry in their own self. Like I tell my teachers also that each of you is a principal of the school. So you
Wow.
have to think like that. Right? That's how if you have that mind shift, you are expanding your role. So when you expand your role in your mind, you start thinking like that. So that change is already come. We have to make it more visible, and we have to rather handhold this change
So you,
and
yeah,
make it into a wider scope for parents also to understand. Yes.
right. You spoke about a beautiful segment called, we miss out on the process. We focus
Yes.
on what is incoming and what is outgoing. We don't look at the
Right.
process. And there could be diversity into that also. But this process
Right.
is done by a team of educators under a leadership. How do
Yes.
you think our teachers need to, learn, unlearn, get into that process? How do you,
Hmm.
help your teachers do that? What are your techniques or approaches that you implement so that our other schools also will learn that?
Uh, I think you have to appeal to their emotions.
Wow.
So I believe that everything in this world is possible if you do it with love, and with that emotion, with that thought in your mind that that I'm honest, I'm reaching you out to you through entire honesty. And if you don't do it in a manner where you say, okay, this is the need of the hour, and you better do this, otherwise so and so things are going to be affected, and not like that. You have to appeal to their emotion. You have to appeal to the inner mother in them.
Wow.
Every teacher, I'm saying male teacher or female teacher, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you have to appeal to the mother inside you, because that's a natural instinct. There's a natural instinct with a mother. With all due respect to fathers, they have another role also. But even a father, I'm saying, if you have that motherly instinct where you're doing something out of this emotion that I want to give the best that there is, and I will do anything for it.
Absolutely.
So if I need to, I know of moms in schools which are in the rural areas where the child is unable to cope up, and the mom studied with the child to help the child.
Yes.
Okay. Even today, we have parents under RT who are learning along with their children so that they can advise the child better. So I'm doing it because I care about my child. So that kind of appeal to the teachers really works. And I believe that everyone wants to learn.
Yes.
But if you allow that person to learn in his, her own way, and in his, her own time, the minute that learning becomes, too much in a box and too time bound, when it is not supplemented by a free hand or an opportunity to innovate and create on your own, then becomes really drab, boring, and it becomes burden. So I
True.
think appealing to the emotion of the teacher is really very important, and that's why you have to start with the why.
Yes.
Why do you want to do it? Okay. Then only somebody will say, okay, I understood. Why do we want to do? So how do I do it now?
Then the optimism
And
comes.
once you know how, yes, then the optimism comes.
Right. Right. Now,
So
um, we have seen a lot of time, even educators, young educators,
yes.
seldomly have a clarity about what is curriculum and what is syllabus. Now, that
Mm-hmm.
is a one huge subject that one can go on. I am coming
Mm-hmm.
to another subject similar to that is we
Mm-hmm.
it has been spoken hugely and very loosely. We use
Mm-hmm.
words creativity and innovation. I want
Mm-hmm.
your help so to make our viewers understand what is the difference between creativity and innovation.
Okay. So I think creativity everyone has. All of us are creative in one way or the other. So creativity, I would say, is for inner joy, and innovation is for the greater good of the world. Okay,
Wow.
so I am creative, I am making a painting, so it's for my own joy. But when I innovate something, I am making something which is going to do greater good. I am doing it for the benefit of the world. So all the innovative ideas that you see today, uh, like the Uber was an innovative idea, a kind of taxi service on hire. That was an innovative idea which came into the market. It was for the benefit of people,
Yes.
right? So innovation, again, innovation, if you do it just for my, if I do it for my own joy and for the purpose of my own creativity and satisfaction, how does it help anyone? Okay, so I made an innovation, and I just kept it, packed it in the box, and kept it saying that, oh, I am great and I am great. That's what I know. That's not going to help the world. So
So we
that's a major difference. But innovation comes out of creativity. Creativity is the origin of innovation.
right, 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 right. So it's like curriculum and syllabus comes out of curriculum and
Yes,
syllabus is the
yes,
innovation, curriculum is the creativity. It's where you get
absolutely. Very well put. Very
activity.
well put.
So no, I am getting influenced with the kind of insight that you're sharing. Honestly, what was there in my mind is completely wiped off, and I am focusing on what you're saying. I'm really enjoying this entire conversation. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Me too, Girish. I just want to, if I may add something, just like we said that innovation comes out of creativity, right? So creativity is the base through which innovation is derived. So understand, we must understand as educators, as parents, as the uh, bearers of this torch of education that we are carrying, that in schools, if you kill creativity, how do you expect innovation from the next generation of students?
True, true.
Right. So if you're putting them in a routine, in a rat race of sorts, and everyone coming out of the same mold, and in a class of 40, even if there are five people who are wanting to showcase their creativity, once again going back to the same thing which we started with, where you said that we have only so much time in a classroom. How do we do that? But thankfully, technology is there to aid us today. So
Yeah.
classrooms are beyond classrooms today, and we must make the best use of it.
Yes.
Creativity must live on. Then only innovation will take birth.
Right, right, right.
Right.
So we are almost coming at the end, but I would not like to end it just abruptly, but on a very on an emotional level, rather, I would put on
Mm-hmm.
a main level. You have insisted and you believe very strongly about values. You believe very strongly about emotions.
Yes.
And we spoke about 21st century skills, but you said it has to be also backed by the right values, the 21st century
True.
values that we all know about the SDG, the
Mm-hmm.
Sustainable Development Goal that UN has spoken about. And the first
Right.
priority is about poverty, and the fourth is
Mm.
education. Having said that, what do you think as students today we need to prepare ourselves for, and
Mm-hmm.
as contributors, as learner individuals, to our society? How do we go about it?
So, the very first thing that we should know about is you should move out of your comfort zone, move out of yourself. You know, it should. You have to look at what the world is all about, what's happening around the world. See, when do you empathize with what's happening around? If you know about it, if you have no knowledge of what's happening in the world, then that empathy is not going to come. See, value building is a very long process, and uh, children cannot be taught values. They catch values from looking at others, be it their peers or their elders or their environment or the social media or wherever. So we have a huge responsibility. See, we are putting the entire burden on students today through this question. The burden lies on the shoulders of the children. That what should students do to be, more compassionate, more empathetic, and being world citizens, caring about the world. So, what are we doing? What are we doing for it? That's an important question. So how are we making children aware of the world that is, and that was, and that should be? You have to link the past with the future,
Yes.
right? So cultivating values, cultivating skills, cultivating an educational background must all go in hand, must go hand in hand without compartmentalizing it into that. Okay, this is a values class, and this is a this class, and this is the other class. How do you bring in values into the curriculum, into the syllabus that you are delivering, into a classroom a scenario that you have? That's going to be really very, very, very important. So I'll give you a very simple example. So a child comes and says that teacher asks, have you all finished your homework that was given? And two children raise their hand and say, we haven't. Okay. So what should a compassionate teacher do? One must understand that what is your reason and what is your reason. The reason may be different. One may be that the child is helpless. There were guests at home and the child didn't have access to his work material. Another thing could be the child wasn't feeling too well. Another child could be that simply I was feeling lazy. A child must be given the opportunity to say that I was feeling very lazy yesterday somehow, and I really did not put my heart into what I was supposed to do. Okay. And then it is for the teacher to dig deeper and say, why were you feeling like that? You know? So once again, I'm saying it's very important to connect with each other. Unless you build this social capital with your children, unless you deposit a lot, you will not be able to withdraw. The child must feel confident about a teacher that she's here to understand me and not to label me that this fellow always lazy, not submitting his work. Okay. So when you come out of these, children are learning. So the same children tomorrow, when they become the workforce, that's how they treat others.
Yes, yes,
Okay, be it the driver, be it the peon, be it an executive, or be it anyone. That's how they would treat other people, because that's how they were treated. That's what they're going to remember. So these values, if you want to pass on, if you're putting this burden on their shoulders, that what kind of values they must have when they become adults and when they are in this world as adults, we have a huge responsibility, because in years to come, by 2030, we are going to be the youngest nation
yes,
with, uh, a population, the youngest population making the largest portion of our country. So we
yes,
have to start yesterday, not today, with these things of value, this way of value building. And I think storytelling is something which has gone missing from our schools. Storytelling, even in science and mathematics, there are a lot of, you can do a lot through storytelling in these subjects also, contrary to popular belief that it's called got to be a serious class. So that's also really important. I think some of these strategies need to be adopted, and children will pick it up. You really don't have to take any extra special efforts. They watch and learn.
absolutely, absolutely. In fact, being an artist myself, I have been reading about it and truly believe that storytelling was a narrative that we used to
Yes,
follow earlier. And that's how, for ages, we never had any scripts, but it was only through word of mouth, through this storytelling process. And it's still retained with us so strongly. Our mythological stories also have been passed on generations through the storytelling method. And
true, true.
it remained very well with us even now. We don't have to really read it. We know it. It's a part and parcel of our life, daily life. Very well put,
Right.
ma'am. I'm very
And
thankful.
Girish, the beauty of it is, sorry, I'm taking a lot of your time, but it's very interesting talking to you. See, the beauty of storytelling, is that every time, two things. One is every time you revisit the story, you learn something new from the same story. And second is, each of us take away something different from that story. Isn't that what creativity and innovation is all about? You don't know what inspiration comes through to a child sitting in your class through the story that you have told. Correct. And you have, say, 40 students sitting in your class or 30 students sitting in your class. There are 30 creative minds at work over there, each one absorbing the story in a different manner and making a value out of it
Correct.
basis his own character and background. So
Yes.
there is so much. I remember one last thought that I'll put. One of the greatest thought leaders, William Miller, he says that India is, a country. It's like a gold mine which is busy extracting silver. I think it is such a beautiful thought that you are a gold mine and you are busy extracting silver from somewhere else, whereas you have your old gold mine. So our children are a gold mine. So to extract that, we have to put the right effort. We have to see where that gold lies, right? And that's up to us as educators. Great job, great challenge, and a great value addition to our lives that we are. This is the purpose that for which we are born.
Right, right.
Thank
I
you,
must
Girish.
thank
Thank you.
Open Forum for Principals and our partner Topper for giving me this opportunity to have such wonderful insights from such wonderful, lovely educators like you. For me, I have taken today not just the technical part of coding, but I've realized that there are so many other elements that one could, derive from your answers itself. That is empathy, something that one needs to look into. There is something called concentration, because the storytelling, when happens, it builds in concentration. Actually, that's when the child, so if your language or programming is that intense, it might sustain the interest of the viewer or the person who's using it. It's also about understanding and working on the why of the challenge. I think that is something that even if a subject like coding has to be, I think why is for everything in life that we need to work upon.
True, true.
And that's how we build. And then yes, definitely comes our planning, our logical reasoning, our way of putting it. The process is something that comes, but you need to start from the why and feel for others, build on to that empathy, and then bring in the process. Thank you so much once again, Priya ma'am, for the wonderful morning that I had. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Girish. It was lovely talking to you. Lovely, lovely. Great effort.